I turned 54 on a Tuesday. No fanfare, no cake, not even a card. Just the hum of the ceiling fan and the smell of coffee brewing, the same as every other morning. From the outside, my life was the picture of stability. A 3-bedroom house in a quiet Ohio suburb, paid off. A wife of 28 years, 2 kids, both grown, one married. A job at the same manufacturing plant for over 2 decades, the kind of steady work people called a good living. Neighbors waved when I mowed the lawn. My coworkers joked that I was the reliable one, the guy who never complained. But that morning, as I sat at the kitchen island scrolling through the few birthday texts, my son's, "Happy birthday, old man," my sister's, "Don't forget to treat yourself," I felt like a ghost in my own home. Linda rushed past me, her work heels clicking on the tile. She dropped a kiss on my cheek like it was any other day. "Gotta run. Meeting at 8, she said, grabbing her keys. I watched her go, the garage door rumbling shut behind her. No pause, no, "oh, wait," no belated realization. Just gone. I sipped my coffee. The silence was heavy. The kids used to make a fuss. Hand-drawn cards, pancakes shaped like their best guess at my age. Even Linda would leave a gift on the table, a new tie, a bottle of bourbon, something small but there. But years pass, and traditions fade. Kids move out, wives get busy, and you tell yourself it's fine because isn't this what you're supposed to want? A quiet house? A predictable life? At work, no one mentioned it. Not that I expected them to. Birthdays weren't a big deal on the floor. But when Carl in accounting remembered it was Stu's birthday last month and passed around a card, I'd signed it without thinking much. Now I wondered if anyone would have done the same for me. I drove home slowly that evening, taking the long way past the lake. The water was still, the sky turning pink. I thought about stopping for a drink, but didn't. Instead, I pulled into the driveway, the empty garage telling me Linda was working late again. Inside, I microwaved a leftover plate of meatloaf and ate alone at the counter. The TV played some game show in the background, laughter ringing out from the audience. I stared at my phone. No missed calls, no new messages. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just disappointed. I was relieved. Relieved no one had noticed because then I wouldn't have to pretend it didn't matter. Relieved I could just let the day slip away, unmarked. Because acknowledging it would mean admitting how much I wanted someone, anyone, to see me. To really see me after all these years of being the steady one, the quiet one, the man who never asked for anything. I washed my plate, turned off the lights, and went to bed early. Linda came home sometime after midnight, her side of the mattress dipping gently as she slid under the covers. I lay there, eyes open, listening to her breathing even out. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered, if I disappeared, how long would it take for someone to notice? The thought didn't scare me. That's what scared me. 3 days after my birthday, I found the receipt. I wasn't snooping, just cleaning out my wallet, tossing old gas slips and faded grocery lists. But there it was, tucked behind my library card, a crumpled slip of paper from the olive grove, dated the day after my birthday. Dinner for 2. Linda's signature at the bottom. I stared at it, my fingers gone cold. She hadn't mentioned going out, hadn't brought home leftovers, hadn't even complained about the service like she usually did. Just came home that night at her usual time, kissed me absent-mindedly on the forehead, and asked if I'd taken the trash out. I sat at the edge of the bed, the receipt pinched between my fingers. The numbers swam. $78.43. Wine then. She only ordered wine when she was celebrating, or consoling someone. My mind spun uselessly, shuffling through explanations. A work dinner, but she would have said. One of her girlfriends? Possible, but she hadn't mentioned anyone lately. And then, the thought I couldn't shake. Who remembers your birthday when your own wife doesn't? I folded the receipt carefully and put it back where I'd found it. That night, I watched her. Really watched her. The way she hummed under her breath while chopping vegetables. The way she scrolled through her phone with a small smile. Normal things, but now they felt like clues. She caught me staring. "What?" she asked, wiping her hands on a towel. "Nothing," I said. just thinking. She raised an eyebrow, a look I knew well, the "you're being weird again" look, and turned back to the stove. I wanted to ask, "Who were you with? Why didn't you tell me?" But the words stuck in my throat, because part of me was afraid of the answer, and the other part was afraid she'd just shrug and say, "Oh, that? It was nothing." Which would hurt more? I lay awake long after she fell asleep, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. The receipt burned a hole in my wallet, in my mind. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the lie. It was about the fact that she'd chosen to spend that night, the night after she'd forgotten me, with someone else. And I hadn't even crossed her mind enough to warrant an explanation. The digital clock ticked over to 1:17 a.m. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. I closed my eyes and wondered when we'd started living past each other instead of together. And worse, when I'd stopped noticing. The rain came down hard the next Sunday, the kind of steady downpour that turns gutters into rivers. Linda was at her sister's for the weekend, some last-minute girls' trip she'd mentioned over toast Thursday morning. I hadn't asked who else was going. I was cleaning out the garage, more for something to do than any real need, when I found Diane's umbrella. It leaned against the back wall, half hidden behind a toolbox. Black, sleek, the kind with the automatic open button. Not Linda's style at all. The memory hit me like a scent. Diane laughing as she shook rain from her hair last Thanksgiving, pressing the button with a magician's flourish. "Best $20 I ever spent," she'd said. I turned the umbrella over in my hands. It was dry, recent. Linda hadn't mentioned Diane coming by. Then again, she hadn't mentioned much of anything lately. The garage felt suddenly airless. I thought about the receipt, the unaccounted hours, the way Linda had been texting more often, but saying less. Little things, all of them, but they stacked up like bricks between us. I carried the umbrella inside and set it by the front door. A test. If Linda saw it, would she mention it? Would she invent a reason? Or would it just disappear again like everything else we didn't talk about? That night, I scrolled through Diane's Facebook, something I hadn't done in years. Her profile was all hiking photos and sunsets, the occasional selfie with friends. Then 3 weeks back, a blurry restaurant photo, wine glasses clinking in the foreground. The caption, "Sometimes you just need a night with your favorite person." The date lined up with the receipt. I closed the app, my pulse loud in my ears. It didn't prove anything. Diane and Linda had been friends since college. They had 100 inside jokes. Favorite person could mean anyone. But the doubt took root anyway, thorny and stubborn. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, the good stuff I saved for holidays, and drank it standing at the kitchen window. The rain had stopped, leaving the world slick and shining under the streetlights. I thought about the last time Linda had called me her favorite anything. The umbrella was gone in the morning. No note, no explanation. Just an absence where it had been. I stood there in my slippers, staring at the empty space by the door, and wondered when I'd started keeping score, and why it felt like I was the only one playing. The pharmacy text came through while I was waiting in line at the hardware store. "Your prescription is ready for pickup," it read, followed by Linda's name. Except Linda hadn't mentioned any new medication, and the pharmacy listed wasn't our usual one. It was clear across town, near Diane's apartment complex. I stood there holding my bag of nails, the fluorescent lights suddenly too bright. My first thought was worry. Was she sick? Hiding something serious? Then the darker suspicion crept in. I knew what kinds of prescriptions people kept secret. I almost called her right then. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she'd been smiling at her phone all week. Maybe it was the way she'd started wearing perfume again, even on grocery runs. Little changes I'd noticed, but hadn't let myself examine too closely. That evening, I accidentally knocked over Linda's purse while she was in the shower. The orange plastic bottle tumbled out with a sound like dice rolling. I picked it up with trembling hands. Not antibiotics, not painkillers. Birth control. The date on the label was recent, 2 weeks after my forgotten birthday. The prescribing doctor's name meant nothing to me. I sat there on our bedroom floor, the pills cool in my palm, and tried to remember the last time Linda and I had been intimate enough to need protection. 6 months? 8? The shower shut off. I slipped the bottle back exactly where I'd found it, my movements precise as a bomb technician. Later, over meatloaf, Linda chattered about her sister's new patio furniture. I nodded along, watching the way her wedding ring caught the light when she gestured. That ring had stayed on through 28 years of dishwashing and gardening and late-night feedings. Now it looked like a prop. I excused myself early, claiming a headache. In the guest room, I stared at my phone contacts list, my thumb hovering over Diane's name. We'd always gotten along, shared the same dry humor, the same taste in old movies. It would be so easy to call, to ask, to confess what I'd found. But what if she already knew? The moon cast long shadows across the floor. Somewhere in the house, Linda laughed at something on TV. The sound, once so familiar, now felt like listening to a stranger. I put the phone down. The real question wasn't whether Linda was sleeping with someone else. The real question was, when had I stopped caring enough to fight for us? And why was I more afraid of the answer than of the betrayal itself? The hotel keycard fell out of Linda's jacket pocket when I was gathering laundry on Thursday morning. A single white card with a blue logo, the Harbor Inn, worn at the edges like it had been carried for weeks. I turned it over in my hands, the plastic cool against my fingertips. No room number, no date, just the damning little rectangle that smelled faintly of her perfume. I stood perfectly still in our laundry room, listening to the hum of the washing machine. The logical part of my brain noted that the Harbor Inn was just 15 minutes from Diane's apartment. The rest of me simply shut down. I slipped the card back where I'd found it. That afternoon, I drove to the hotel. Not to confront anyone, just to see it. The place where my marriage had quietly unraveled without my noticing. The 3-story brick building looked ordinary, almost cheap. I sat in the parking lot watching couples come and go, wondering which room had been theirs. Had they gotten one with a view? Had Linda laughed when Diane fumbled with the key card? My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I stared at the message until the screen went dark. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and wandered through our house like a ghost. Our wedding photo still hung in the hallway, frozen in 1995. Linda's favorite coffee mug sat in the dishwasher, lipstick smudged on the rim. The ordinary artifacts of a shared life that suddenly felt like museum exhibits, relics of something long dead. I found myself standing in front of Linda's jewelry box. Inside, the pearl necklace I'd given her for our 20th anniversary lay coiled like a sleeping snake. Next to it, a new silver bracelet I didn't recognize. The door opened just after midnight. I watched from the dark living room as Linda tiptoed in, her shoes in one hand. She paused when she saw me, her face flickering through surprise, then guilt, then something like resignation. "You're up," she said. I nodded toward the window. Couldn't sleep. We looked at each other across the room, the space between us charged with everything we weren't saying. For a wild moment, I considered showing her the hotel key I'd photographed, asking about the bracelet, demanding the truth. But then she sighed and rubbed her neck, a tired gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. And something inside me broke. Not with anger, but with a terrible, quiet understanding. The truth was already here, in this room with us. It was in the way she couldn't quite meet my eyes, in the new bracelet she hadn't shown me, in the fact that neither of us had the energy left to pretend anymore. As she disappeared down the hall to shower, I remained at the window, watching my reflection in the glass. The real question wasn't whether Linda was having an affair. It was why I was still here, watching it happen. The credit card statement arrived on Saturday morning. I almost didn't look. Just another habit broken after 28 years of shared finances. But something made me tear the envelope open. 3 charges from the Harbor Inn glowed on the page like warning lights, all within the past month. All on nights Linda had claimed to be working late. The dates lined up perfectly with the text messages still saved in my phone. "Don't wait up." Meeting running long. "Order pizza without me." I sat at the kitchen table, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. The numbers were so ordinary. $129, $89, $112. as if our marriage could be reduced to receipts and late fees. Linda walked in, fresh from her morning run. She froze when she saw the statement in front of me, a droplet of sweat sliding down her temple. Her eyes flicked from the paper to my face and back again. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The coffee maker gurgled. A dog barked outside. The ordinary sounds of a Saturday morning, now sharp as broken glass. "You should have just asked," she finally said. No denial, no apology, just that quiet resignation, as if we'd both known this moment was coming. I exhaled a laugh that tasted like bile. "Would you have told me the truth?" She pulled out a chair and sat across from me, her running shoes leaving faint marks on the floor. Does it matter now? The simplicity of it stunned me. No tears, no excuses, just the quiet collapse of everything we'd built. I studied her face, the faint lines around her eyes, the way her ponytail clung to her damp neck. When had she become a stranger? Was it when she started coming home late, or years earlier when we'd stopped trying to bridge the growing silence between us? "I found the birth control too," I said. Linda nodded slowly, as if we were discussing grocery lists. "I figured you might—" The sunlight through the window caught her wedding ring, the diamond throwing fractured light across the table. She followed my gaze and twisted the band absently, a nervous habit I remembered from when the kids were born. We sat there in the wreckage, neither of us knowing what to say next. The truth hung between us, heavy and undeniable. I realized then that I didn't even want to ask about Diane anymore. The details didn't matter. The only question left was simpler and far more terrifying. What happened to the people we used to be? I waited until evening, when the light through the kitchen windows turned gold and heavy. Linda sat at the table, flipping through a magazine she wasn't reading. The silence between us had taken on a new quality, not just absence, but expectation. The air hummed with it. I set down my coffee cup. The sound made her glance up. "Did you ever love me?" I asked. Not about Diane. Not about the hotel receipts or the birth control or any of the evidence piling up between us. Just that. Simple. Terrifying. Linda's fingers stilled on the magazine page. For a moment, she looked so young. The girl I'd met at that summer bonfire in '89, her hair smelling like smoke and cheap beer. Then she blinked, and she was herself again. "Of course I did," she said. Past tense. Neither of us missed it. The refrigerator kicked on, filling the silence. Outside, a neighbor's sprinkler hissed. Ordinary sounds, the soundtrack of a life built together. "But not enough," I said. It wasn't an accusation, just the truth laid bare between us. Linda exhaled slowly, her shoulders dropping as if she'd been carrying something heavy for years. "I think we just forgot how." I thought of all the small abandonments, the birthdays unnoticed, the conversations left unfinished, the way we'd started sleeping with space between us long before either of us admitted why. Love hadn't disappeared in an explosion. It had eroded grain by grain while we weren't looking. Linda reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine before pulling back. "I never wanted to hurt you." That, more than anything, cracked something open in me. Because it was true. She hadn't set out to break us. Neither had I. We just stopped tending to what mattered until one day there was nothing left to save. I looked around the kitchen, at the chipped casserole dish we'd gotten as a wedding gift, at the photo of the kids at Disneyland stuck to the fridge with a magnet from the oil change place. All these fragments of a life I'd thought was solid. "What now?" I asked. Linda wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand, a gesture so familiar it ached. "I don't know." And there it was, the truth we'd been avoiding, not just that our marriage was over, but that it had been over for a long time, and we'd been too afraid or too tired to admit it. That night, I lay awake in the guest room again, listening to the house settle around me. The radiator clanked, a floorboard creaked. Somewhere down the hall, Linda cried softly, the sound muffled by a pillow. I stared at the ceiling and wondered, when does love become habit? When does loyalty become cowardice? And how do you know when it's time to let go? not with anger, not with drama, but with the quiet grace of acknowledging that some things simply run their course. The answers wouldn't come. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But for the first time in years, the questions felt worth asking.